Welcome and thank you for joining us for our 50th Murrow Symposium. This is a historic event, and I'm delighted you've joined us for our Lifetime Achievement Award presentation. I'd like to extend a special welcome to Ana Cabrera and to members of her family, to WSU's Board of Regents members who are here, to WSU's President Elizabeth Cantwell, and to WSU Provost Chris Riley-Tillman. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The Murrow Symposium, and especially our 50th Murrow Symposium, is a momentous occasion. I'm grateful to all donors who made this event possible. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Barbara Dornink and Julie Sinewald, Jill Ballow, Bruce Amundsen, Norma McKinney, and KHQ-TV Spokane. Other generous donors include Robert and Marcy Dove, Sarah English, Kathy Maurer, Mike Nestroff, and TVW. Together, their giving allows us to execute the symposium at a high level and to keep this event free for our students and community members. There are too many people to thank individually for their role in planning and organizing the symposium, so please check our commemorative newspaper for a full list of contributors. Having said this, I must recognize Murrow College faculty and staff members. Please stand real quick so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you. Members of the Murrow Professional Advisory Board who are here, do you mind standing real quick? Wonderful. And our partners at Northwest Public Broadcasting for their outstanding contributions to the Murrow Symposium. Thank you, everyone. In addition, we have a special guest here this evening. Kay White hosted Ed Murrow when he visited Pullman to give the university's 1962 commencement address. Recognizing her talent, he selected her to join his team at CBS News. She had a 23-year career there and served as CBS's first female vice president for news and sports. A featured speaker at an early symposium, Kay has joined us here this afternoon. Kay, welcome back to Pullman. Do you mind standing so we can recognize you? Kay is a legend, folks. You can't make this stuff up. It's a great story. Almost a century ago, Edward R. Murrow graduated from Washington State University. Today, he stands not just in journalism's past, but as its core. He is our field's North Star, the enduring benchmark for excellence, courage, and integrity, whose example continues to guide the profession. Murrow demonstrated that a journalist's first loyalty is to facts and truth. He understood journalism not merely as an occupation, but as a public trust. In Murrow's hands, journalism became an ethical calling, rooted in accuracy, guided by principle, and steadfastly above partisanship. His warning that television could teach, illuminate, and inspire, or become merely wires and lights in a box, resonates in an age of digital noise, easy access to false or misleading information, and AI-driven content. More than 60 years after his passing, he remains journalism's brightest example. His work defines the very character of our profession. Murrow College Lifetime Achievement Award honorees have included an array of journalistic luminaries who reflect his standard of excellence. Please join me in watching this tribute.
For many of us to realize that there's a whole generation not familiar with Edward R. Murrow. To them, his name just appears in a history book. For those of us in broadcast news, He set the standards. As former CBS commentator Eric Severide said upon Murrow's death in 1965, he was a shooting star, and we will live in his afterglow for a very long time. In a small way, the Edward R. Murrow Symposium has tried to keep that glow alive.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Eric Severide.
This is my first time here in Pullman. I think largely because it's a damn hard place to get to. I believe that Ed would feel that the real truth is, in this country, we have no alternative except trust. And I think one thing he hated very much, and that is this business of looking upon other human beings symbolically and categorizing them. See, by that little mental exercise, you dehumanize your enemy.
Let me remind you that the journalism of his day, not so long past, left room for an occasional touch of humility and self-doubt. Murrow could be, and on occasion was, the unsheathed sword of righteous indignation. But he saved that sort of thing for particularly loathsome targets. That's something for us to remember as reporters.
So many of us feel in some way, we nurture this myth that, in a sense, we're all still auditioning for Edward R. Murrow, for a man who really didn't need to enunciate standards because he embodied them.
We live in a time when events happen with great acceleration, and what a journalist and those who work with them and even against them in our adversary system, government and the media, have to be prepared to think about is what they will do when the roof falls in.
I believe that the norms and habits of television news now threaten to undermine our collective ability to respond as a nation to the most serious problems we face. This instrument can teach.
It can illuminate, yes, and even it can inspire.
But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. Otherwise, it is merely wires and lights in a box.
The old boys who have come out of this school proved to be made out of old leather and hamstrings. We don't go down easy, and Ed Murrow never went down easy. He didn't care about how he looked. He didn't care much about how he sounded. He cared about covering and presenting the news. How precious is that?
So finally, my wife asked the toughest question. Will you, she said the other day, tell these young people at Ed Murrow's alma mater to go into journalism or to do something else? If you believe what Murrow stood for, that broadcasting is a public service, then I would say to all of you who are thinking about it, please come into the business. We need you.
American journalists should return to their real mission, to follow the truth wherever it leads us. As Murrow said, we are all responsible. Nothing can replace the need to be there and to see with your own eyes the role of the reporter.
And I'm hopeful tonight that there are some future Murrows in this audience, armed with bravery, a nose for truth, and an internal Geiger counter tuned to register malarkey. Believe me, you aspiring journalists, you will need it.
No, we can't know journalism's future, but I see every reason to hope that our yearning for the values of Edward R. Murrow, integrity, courage, and empathy will and are rising again, and that we will lift truth off its knees and awaken reawaken our compassion.
Our republic has been on the edge of calamity before. Truth, though, as Ed Murrow believed in practice, was stronger than name-calling and accusation and innuendo. And while we have allowed others to define us, ours is still an honorable profession, but only if we insist to make it so. Thank you.
Wonderful work. We live in an era of extraordinary paradox. Never have we had such immediate access to so much information, but never has truth seemed so elusive and trust in information and its sources seemed so tenuous. What does outstanding journalism look like today in an age of artificial intelligence when hallucinated quotes and conjured images can circle the globe in an instant? The question isn't whether our tools have changed, they have, but whether our purpose has changed. AI can blur the line between fact and fabrication. It can amplify error and distort reality. Those bent on deception can use it to flood our public sphere with doubt, distraction, and falsehood on an unprecedented scale. And this is precisely why journalism matters now. When noise accelerates, verification becomes essential. When trust erodes, credibility becomes paramount. When voices deny truth, courage and integrity become crucial. Today, the hard work of a journalist demands rigorous consideration of information, understanding of nuance and context, and an unwavering commitment to seeking and confirming credible evidence, qualities that reflect the legacy of Edward R. Murrow. We recognize the work of such a journalist this afternoon with a presentation of the Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award to Ana Cabrera. We begin this afternoon's award presentation with WSU Provost Chris Riley-Tillman. Dr. Riley-Tillman's career has been marked by a commitment to innovative leadership in higher education, including research that advances the use of evidence-based best practices in schools. His expertise has informed educational settings nationwide and across the world. As WSU's provost, he is leading our efforts to shape academic policy, generate greater programmatic efficiency and quality, and assess institutional progress. Dr. Chris Riley-Tillman.
Individuals living in free societies require truthful information to function effectively in a democracy. That was true 50 years ago. It's more true today, and it's certainly not going to become less true in the future. This depends on the work of journalists and other professionals in communications to seek and report the truth as Murrow did. Edward R. Murrow built his legacy on courage, innovation, professional excellence, but we still reference his work today because of his fearless dedication to the truth, something which, again, is more relevant today than ever. In seeking to tell the truth and fear no man, as he put it, Murrow established an ethical imperative for all of us. It's a point of pride that Murrow College continues the legacy of the most impactful reporter in the history of broadcast journalism. The mission of Murrow College is to teach students and inspire students, keeping with ethics, courage, and professional excellence. We do that today by honoring a kook. On the 50th celebration of this symposium, 50 years, sometimes you have to think about the amazing things that happen at universities. This is an incredible example of something that could really only happen here. And we get to award Ana Cabrera, a Coug, this Lifetime Achievement Award, particularly special on this 50th anniversary. I went off the script, and so that probably didn't help very much. And I'm pretty sure there's some journalism classes I could take that would be helpful to get me to do that more successfully. Well, to move me off of the stage and get to the main attraction, please join me in welcoming WSU's 12th president, Dr. Elizabeth Cantwell, to present the award. President Cantwell began her journey at WSU 1 year ago with this particular event. She's held the highest levels of leadership in higher education, and prior to that, worked for an entire career serving our nation's security interest. She's an engineer at heart. I know that because I hear about her engineering principles and background on a daily, if not hourly basis. And she's leading us through a transformational period at a moment of higher education, which is quite interesting to say the least. As WSU harnesses the power of artificial intelligence to take a position of national leadership in educational intervention. Please join me in welcoming President Cantwell to the stage.
I'm clutching my notes, so I will not go off script. But I did start my career at WSU on April 1st last year at this symposium. It was really the first thing that I did. And I told the story then, and I'll tell you again why journalism is so important to me as an engineer. I came into higher education because somebody told me and proved it to me that the national security interests of the nation were most dependent on free and open education and our capacity to deliver citizens who could be citizens. And I believe that is really one of the top sort of moral draws that we have in this country. But I include journalism really along with that. So journalism plays this critical role for individuals living in our society, not just because they live here, but they participate. We need them to actively participate in our democratic society by monitoring and tempering the influence of those in power, not just observing those in government, business, and other organizations and holding them accountable for their actions and outcomes, but actually holding them accountable for the plans they make and the roadmaps they draw. So the things that happen before outcomes and actions are equally important. We see that in journalism all the time. So this contribution of the flow of factual, accurate information, and we require the ability that is presented to us in ways that are interpretable. For decades, Murrow College faculty have recognized and honored the achievements of our nation's best journalists, those who present us with the opportunity to understand the facts. And at this symposium, the Murrow Symposium, and it's just incredible to watch some of the past speakers here. The Murrow Award recipients have demonstrated a commitment to the standards of truth and excellence exemplified by Edward R. Murrow as he reported from London's rooftops during World War II. He challenged the abuses of power by Senator Joseph McCarthy, I think incredibly relevant to think about right now, and documented the plight of migrant farm workers in Harvest of Shame. So today we honor a journalist who does genuinely personify Murrow's ethical courage and professional excellence by presenting Ana Cabrera with the 2026 Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism. I'm really glad that came out all nice. Few journalists clearly reflect Murrow's resolve to tell critical stories through accurate, steady, and balanced journalism. Across the full spectrum of her work, from, and you've seen it, I know, natural disasters and civil unrest, to interviews with world leaders, Ana's reporting is marked by exceptional preparation and a notable dedication to accurate and unbiased reporting. In the fashion of Edgar R. Murrow, Ana Cabrera seeks accountability and truth without injecting personal bias. Her accolades include an Emmy for her coverage of Colorado's massive High Park fire, and the Outstanding Television Anchor Impact Award presented by the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Please join me in watching this tribute.
My first impression of Ana, she is simply a lovely, kind human and a dedicated journalist.
What I recall from going to school with Ana was just her maturity and her poise and her dedication and commitment, even at an age where so many of us are still sorting things out.
A journalist who really values the responsibility she has to the viewer.
She was fun, easygoing, but eager to put in the work and excited to be there.
Oh wow, this person has the it factor.
She is curious, she is respectful, she is sensitive, she is knowledgeable, and she is compassionate. And all of those factors or elements make her a unique and wonderful journalist.
At 9 o'clock, good morning to you. I'm Ana Cabrera.
And I'm Sean Owsley, and new this morning.
Even before I met her, our executive producer, Tracy Zaravecka, had a VHS tape. Hey, have this young lady from WSU that is interested in one of the jobs. Would you mind taking a look at that video?
And with all the water restrictions, people say the only thing growing in their yard are weeds.
You could even see then there's that seed, that spark, that little bit of sprinkle of magic that she had. It was there, it was raw, it needed to be refined, which she has done a great job of doing.
She had a drive to keep learning. She wasn't afraid to fail, and she really learned from her mistakes. She took feedback really, really well.
How am I going to get better than I was yesterday? That's her. It's always been her, it will always be her. And that's why she has moved up so fast.
Ana has put in the work. She has paid her dues. And that's why she is successful. There are no shortcuts. And I think Ana really exemplifies all of that.
From KHQ to KMGH to CNN to MS Now, she has the star qualities. She always has. She continues to do so.
I think it was a few months into her full-time weekend anchoring gig, we went through a cycle of every Saturday, a major breaking news story happened during our show.
Breaking news right now, we are learning there's been some kind of an incident right now on the London Bridge. Let me read you the information we have confirmed.
There was a horrific London Bridge terror attack back in 2017, and Ana did live rolling breaking news coverage for 9 hours.
Talk about incredible journalism. The amount of people, the amount of depth she brought to those reports, going 9 hours straight. That's unheard of. Only Ana Cabrera can do something like that.
Whether it was Ferguson or Charlottesville or a plane crash, she was there for hours on end by herself. And I think that her ability to anchor and tell all those stories really set her up for a terrific run.
Knowing and having knowledge on so many topics gives you the opportunity when something breaks, okay, I can go, right? I can go because I know what the story is about. I have prepared.
Ana is probably the most prepared anchor I've ever worked with. She wants to make sure she's completely armed with all of the facts.
I know not to disturb Ana in the hours leading up to a newscast, because in many ways, she's like a university student, studying the news of the day to find out what's happening.
When there is a editorial call at 5:30 in the morning or 6 in the morning, Ana was as read up and as prepared as anyone. And I believe that she probably went jogging an hour before that.
She's someone that has deep passion and conviction, and definitely is the hardest working person that I've ever known.
The work that she had to do to become a runner at Washington State was the kind of work that she put into being a journalist. It's not about what she does on the desk. It's what she does before she gets on the desk each and every day.
Every day for Ana is a marathon, and she wins. She comes number one in those marathons because she prepares. She prepares she cares, she listens, and she studies.
Ana, congratulations on the Edward R. Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award. You're incredibly deserving, and we're all incredibly proud of you.
I'm so blessed to have known you and worked with you so closely, and I am so proud of you. This award is so much deserved.
I just am in awe of your work ethic, your always upbeat attitude. There's so much I value about you, and I'm so glad that your alma mater also values that too, and giving you this honor. Congratulations times a million.
We're lucky to have you as an alum. The public is lucky to have you as a journalist and a source for truth and information, and I'm fortunate to consider you a friend. So congratulations, and go Cougs.
You haven't even reached your ceiling yet. That's the scary part of all this, and we're rooting for you. We have since day one. Your trajectory has been amazing, but we were not surprised by it because you are just simply a talent. But more importantly, you're just a kind, authentic human being.
I am honored to be able to have learned from you every single day how passion, compassion, intelligence, respect, and sensitivity can make such a difference in the world. You make that difference, and it is a privilege to call you friend. Te quiero mucho, Ana.
You inspire so many people around you, near and far, and I can't wait to see all the things you do in the future. I miss you. I love you. I'm so grateful I got to spend such a large portion of my career learning from you, growing alongside you, and most importantly, getting to call you a friend at the end of the day.
Hey, An, you're just such a tremendous example to me and to Jack and to Maria, and maybe your greatest professional accomplishment to date is just the example that you've set for them. They know how to be successful because of you, and congratulations. I'm so proud of you and all you've accomplished in your career.
So Ana Cabrera's work reminds us that journalism, the kind of journalism pioneered and practiced by Edward R. Murrow, requires determination, true courage, and inspires confidence and real trust. How appropriate to present her with the 2026 Murrow College of Communication Lifetime Achievement Award when the symposium theme is the Murrow Standard, built on legacy, defining the future. Ana, blessings.
That video, I'm like a teary, sweaty mess right now after all of that. And gosh, just so deeply honored. Thank you, President Cantwell. Thank you, Dean Pinkleton. Thank you all for being here and for the honor of receiving this most meaningful and prestigious award. It feels like not long ago I was sitting in your seat, first as a student and then as a professional, really admiring the work of the incredible journalists who've accepted this award before me. true icons of journalism and broadcasting, trailblazers who have set the standard for excellence. It is surreal to now be receiving this honor, especially in the place where it all began for me. Truly, coming back to Pullman, so very special. To me, it feels a little like walking on hallowed ground in a favorite pair of slippers. There's something so comforting and warm and inviting, and yet awe-inspiring. Just the simple beauty of the rolling wheat fields, the buzz of the mall, the friendly and feisty cougar spirit. The past couple of days, I've been reminiscing and flashing back to singing the fight song in what was Martin Stadium and running the hills of the Palouse, lugging a camera and microphone around campus, inevitably slipping on ice a time or two. This is where legends have been made. You know the names. Keith Jackson, legend. Cindy Brunson, another sports broadcasting legend. Mark Wright, Eric Johnson, Bertha Lynn. These are legends of Seattle and Denver news markets. All of them are Cougs. And of course, Glenn Johnson, the voice of the Cougs, legend. But there's really no one bigger or more consequential in this university's history, especially in the world of journalism, than Edward R. Murrow. The world knows that name because this man was next level special. If you can believe it, he didn't actually have formal journalistic training when he graduated from Washington State University. But he had a real gift for storytelling. He knew how to get to the heart of a story. And he had guts. Murrow captivated audiences, first as a war correspondent. During World War II, he brought listeners with him on a journey, flying on bombing missions, bearing witness to the Nazi takeover through Europe, ensuring the world was informed through every tragic or heroic moment. But it was in the mid-1950s when Murrow courageously stood up to Senator Joseph McCarthy that he made his most enduring impact. And we learned at the core of effective journalism is getting the truth out. McCarthy claimed communism was spreading across the U.S. and within the U.S. government, and he was determined to root it out. At that time, there was a crackdown on civil liberties and free speech and thinking. Federal employees had to take loyalty oaths. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP were labeled as communist influenced. Investigations were launched against people and organizations that didn't cooperate or who pushed back. Murrow did not bow to the bullying and the bluster. He didn't just accept McCarthy's tactics and narrative. He made it his mission to uncover the truth, to ask probing questions, to follow the facts wherever they led, and to report without fear or favor. This is the life of a true mission-driven journalist. Murrow didn't try to be provocative. His goal wasn't to make content for clicks or ratings. He wasn't chasing fame or fortune. He was committed to a calling that was to serve the people by giving them accurate information, shining light, pressing for truth rather than parroting a message from the powerful. Quite the contrary, he used his powerful platform to hold power to account by bearing witness and shining light and exposing the demagoguery of Senator Joseph McCarthy. And guess what? The truth won out. The American people won because Murrow stayed focused on that mission, focused on delivering the true story to the men, women, families, and communities thirsting for facts and understanding of their circumstances and the world. And it is with that spirit and that role model that I embarked on my own journalism journey, on a road that has presented many highs and lows, twists and turns, speed bumps and potholes along the way. And those of you who are on this road can relate. Those of you who are just embarking on it will soon understand. We're all part of a community. And so I accept this award on behalf of this community and those leaders and those mentors who have invested in me and helped provide guidance along my path. I am truly humbled. And I'd like to share some lessons that I've learned that I hope can contribute to making this community stronger and to lifting up those who will be leading us into the future. Like Murrow, you gotta take risks. Let me take you back to when I was a student here at WSU. I was recruited to run cross country and track. And I received part athletic and part academic scholarship. And that was so important to my family because we have a big family. I'm one of 5 kids. My parents really couldn't afford to pay for all of us to go to college. So both school and running were very important to me. I really worked hard to get good grades. I trained diligently. But I think it was my maybe junior year of college when I realized I was letting opportunity pass me by. As a broadcasting student, I needed real-world experience, and Cable 8 presented just that. I needed to make time for it. And by the way, I see Marvin is still the faculty advisor. I mean, talk about legend. That guy was the man in my day too. You don't know just how blessed, how lucky you are to have him at the helm. So anyway, among other things, I decided to audition for a movie critic show on Cable 8, which is funny because those of you who know me well know I'm not a big movie watcher, but I wanted to try something different, and I wanted to build my on-camera presence, my storytelling skills. It seemed like a fun possibility. I remember racing from cross-country practice in my sweats one evening to get to the audition, feeling like I had already blown it because I wasn't dressed for the part. We did the audition, at least a couple dozen were there. We did 2 at a time so we could play off each other. I don't really remember what movie I had to critique. I do remember feeling like, it's probably mediocre at best when I walked away. Somehow, I got the part, I got the role, although I do remember I was pretty lousy at it. We were short on staff and budget, which led to me roping in to help me out my younger brother, Nate, who's here with me. We went to go see the at the time, new Adam Sandler movie, Punch Drunk Love. And that way he could be my co-host for an episode. Frankly, the movie wasn't very good. I think our take on it was even worse. But what I learned is taking risks is how you find the right fit. Sometimes you fail, and sometimes that risk-taking leads to a major breakthrough. So that was like fall, winter, springtime rolled around, and it was time for the Murrow Symposium. I almost forgot it was taking place. I raced up to the Cub here where there was a resume critiquing session going on, and I happened to meet Tracy Zaravicka from KHQ-TV. And that moment set off a chain of events that led to my first job in TV news in Spokane at KHQ. They took a risk hiring someone so inexperienced, but that tells you a lot about the kind of shop KHQ is. Invested in our community and developing talent. And as a young reporter, the KHQ staff, beyond mentoring me in traditional journalism, they empowered me to take risks, to get creative in telling stories in non-traditional ways as well. I learned from KHQ legends like Sean Owsley how to do impactful and demonstrative live shots that would help connect with the viewer in a deeper way, to be memorable, to make the audience want to watch, want to listen. Plus, it was fun. And all of that foundation came from that initial networking opportunity and taking a risk to have my resume critiqued right here, more than 20 years ago. Now, I realize these are small risks, nothing like Murrow reporting from a war zone. But taking risks gets easier the more you do it. It's like muscle memory. You're a runner and you run, you train, you get faster. You lift weights, you get stronger. You have to do the work. You have to put yourself out there. Be open to new experiences, new challenges. You're going to win some and lose some, but at the end of the day, you will learn a lot. And you'll develop an innovative mindset that can lead to some things you never saw coming. It also builds resilience. It helps build courage to take more risks. A former news director of mine reminded me of when I was a reporter in Denver and I was sent to knock on the door of the Denver police chief one weekend because he and his department were evading our questions. And boy, was the chief angry. He at first stonewalled me and he booted me off his property. His comms director immediately called my news director and gave him an earful. But at the end of the day, the courage to confront authority paid off. I stayed focused on the mission of serving the community. I had to get the story, the complete story. And the community eventually got answers because I eventually got that interview. We all face those difficult and challenging moments. You have to make choices. Do you do it? How do you go about it? And sometimes the results don't come quickly. Sometimes it's a grind. Of course, that's not unique to the work of journalists. We're in good company with doctors, teachers, scientists, police officers, and so many others. This work requires sacrifice and tenacity. You want to talk about a grind? Work a morning show. Getting up at 1:30 in the morning can feel like you're in the fog or you're in zombie mode a lot of the time. I did it for about 4 years in Denver, but with it came a lot of camaraderie, kind of that whole idea of misery loves company. You're like, all for one, one for all. You're all in it together, in the trenches together. It builds a lot of sense of community. And it also provided a much bigger microphone and a bigger opportunity to make a difference, to have an impact. As morning anchor, I got to anchor some real big stories that happened in Denver and Colorado at the time, like the Aurora Theater shooting. We were in breaking news coverage from about 3 a.m. till noon, weaving in and out of press conferences, interviewing witnesses and survivors, and trying to figure out how and why a person with this high-powered weapon could do such a thing. I anchored live from the site of the Denver presidential debate between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, being lined up on that riser with all these national news networks and media from around the country. That was the thrill. And the High Park fire, which at the time was the biggest, most destructive wildfire in state history. And my co-anchor, Mitch Jelniker, and I anchored our fire coverage from the field, and our morning show team earned an Emmy for it. And perhaps that's why in 2013, CNN came calling. I didn't have an agent at the time. I hadn't sought that opportunity. It was a big opportunity, but I wasn't quite sure it was the right direction for my career. Felt like a great opportunity, but it also felt like a big risk. What if I hated it? What if I couldn't cut it? My parents reminded me, sometimes you have to push outside your comfort zone to find your true calling and to grow. So I took a leap to be a national correspondent for CNN based in Denver, which proved to be a perfect launching pad for covering all kinds of stories across the country and even internationally, everything from mass shootings and natural disasters to terror attacks to politics and even pot. Being based in Colorado, of course, that's like ground zero of the marijuana legalization movement. So I was known around the office as the unofficial cannabis correspondent for CNN. Who knew that indica, like indicouch, was good for relaxing, or sativa was the strain for getting energy and focus? Guys, remember, I'm a runner, I'm not a smoker. But I've always loved that this work allows me to learn about so many different subjects. There's always so much more to learn. I eventually earned a spot as the weekend primetime anchor on CNN, and my whole family moved to New York. And this was right at the start of the first Trump administration. No pressure, right? In fact, during my very first show there at CNN, I had to cover North Korea firing off ballistic missiles, and all of a sudden we were in rolling breaking news coverage for 6 hours with limited commercial breaks. And it was on me to lead an insightful conversation about the complex web of geopolitical and national security concerns on a topic I knew very little about just the day before. Before I go on, I have to acknowledge that this was all made possible because of Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN at the time, who believed in my ability, even in the absence of a lot of experience with this type of coverage. Great leaders and mentors can see our potential, and they can provide an opportunity to realize it. And that was just the beginning. A global pandemic, historic presidential impeachments, indictments, and assassination attempts, record-setting floods and wildfires, wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. Just some of the adventures along this journey. At times exhilarating, at times exhausting. Are there times I feel overwhelmed? Absolutely. Have I experienced imposter syndrome? For sure. Sometimes I still do. Maybe you do too. Don't give up. Stay focused. Keep grinding away and remind yourself why you do it. Just as your team needs you. As a journalist, your community, your country, the world needs you. But it's important to remember it's not about me. And I think this is perhaps the most important lesson, one that I learned early in my career. Many of you here might remember that when I started at KHQ, I really struggled. The weirdest thing was I experienced stage fright. And the thing is, I'd always enjoyed performance. I grew up playing the piano and participating in school musicals and church choirs. As an athlete, I loved that feeling of towing the starting line, having to be on. It was a thrill. And that performance component is part of why I pursued broadcast journalism. But for weeks, maybe even months, trying to do the perfect live shot seemed elusive. The pace of pitching stories, lining up interviews, shooting those interviews, and all the other visual elements, and logging, writing, editing, every single day, it was stressful. And sometimes when it came time for that live shot, the end of all of that, if I stumbled over a word, my brain was like a train getting derailed, and I would get flustered, I might make another mistake. And I remember coming back to KHQ one evening after my 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock live shot and hadn't gone how I had hoped. The broadcast was still going and the anchors were on a commercial break. And I was walking through the newsroom and I looked over and I made eye contact with Stephanie Vigil, who was one of the main anchors at the time at KHQ. And she knew I was down. So she smiled and she hollered from the set, "Don't worry, Ana. One time I said, I'm Dan Kleckner live on TV." Dan was her co-anchor at the time. Now, this was obviously a total anchorman moment, just autopilot reading the teleprompter. I admit, it made me laugh. And those words of encouragement meant so much to me. This business, it can be brutal. We have to support each other and lift each other up. So I kept grinding away. And a real turning point for me came when tragedy struck the region. A mom, Brenda Groney, and her fiance, Mark McKenzie, her teenage son, Slade, were found murdered. The family's two youngest children, Shasta and Dylan Groney, had gone missing. National media descended, state, local, eventually federal law enforcement and search teams moved into Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We did round-the-clock coverage as the days passed without major breakthroughs and leads, as the search grew more intense and more desperate. I remember taking an overnight shift in one of the news rigs, and we had to sleep on site just in case that big break came before morning. And despite being sleep deprived, I finally stopped thinking about me, and I just focused on the story, real people, real lives. And guess what? I started having good live shots. I realized the magic of connecting to the story and to the people who are impacted and to the vital role of informing the public. There was a killer on the loose. There were still children who needed help. And I poured all of my energy into making sure the community knew what was happening as it was happening, while also earning the trust of those at the heart of the story, people like Mark McKenzie's mother or Shasta and Dylan's aunt, providing them a venue to share their suffering and their grief and their hope of finding the children alive. Still think about that family now, more than 20 years later. Always remember, it is not about you. It's about them, every single person who relies on you to tell their story or to reveal something about their community or society and beyond. I think that's extra important to think about now. And as journalism moves into the future, people have a lot of choices out there right now for news and information. Technological changes are happening faster than we can keep up. The traditional career path for a journalist is less obvious. Frankly, anyone can start their own YouTube channel or Substack or create their own Instagram video or TikTok story. Ask 50 people where they get their news, you might get 50 different answers. It's an exciting but confusing time in this media industry because the opportunities and the platforms seem infinite. We need to keep working to build our relationship with audiences on these different platforms, but we can't lose sight of the mission. In this diluted media ecosystem, people still want the facts. They still want to understand what's happening around them. And the public looks to people they trust. To build that trust, you have to be truthful. One of my favorite Murrow quotes is, "To be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be credible. To be credible, we must be truthful." It is critical for journalists not to compromise truthful, objective reporting for the quick high of posting a provocative video that might go viral. Being a journalist comes with tremendous responsibility, and the public needs journalists who have access to people in those positions of authority to ask the tough questions, to hold people in power accountable, to be the government watchdog. They need us to shine light on the truth. I've learned that asking good questions is one of the most important parts of the work of journalists for getting at the truth. And I remind myself I'm a conduit for my viewers. Viewers of all walks of life, of all political perspectives. What are the questions they have? What answers do they seek? Questions are powerful. Currently in my role as an anchor at MS Now, I spend a lot of my shows asking questions of lawmakers, and experts, and everyday people who are impacted by the actions and policies of local, national, and world leaders. There are so many issues that affect all of us, America and global community, things like immigration and climate change, tariffs and the economy, education and healthcare, foreign affairs and war. So many questions to ask. Why did the US attack Iran now? What evidence was there of an imminent threat? What's the end game? These are the questions we're asking the Trump administration. I also questioned Iran's deputy foreign minister about their nuclear program, about why they're shooting missiles at their Gulf neighbors, at hospitals, at airports, and asked why are they preventing Iranian citizens from accessing the internet. Of course, there's also what's happening right here on the streets of America. Why are federal authorities surging into US towns and cities, killing citizens, cracking down on protesters and journalists, detaining people like 5-year-old Liam Ramos, that little boy with the blue bunny hat, the Spider-Man backpack? We're seeking answers from officials and immigration advocates and attorneys. What about our nation's health? Why did the CDC move to change the childhood vaccine schedule? What does the science say? What are the risks? I invited the CDC's former chief medical officer, Dr. Deborah Howery, who has served multiple administrations on my show, to help us understand the science and what families should do. The questions of consequence are seemingly endless. People might not like the questions or the answers, but our goal is not to be liked. It's not to serve only part of the population or to reinforce certain beliefs. It's to uncover the true facts. Honestly, when I'm getting social media hate from the political left and the political right about the same segment on my show, I figure I've probably done something right. Now, as much as ever, the American people need access to credible, reliable, accurate, and revelatory reporting without the spin. No person in power should be able to control the message. Not in this country. That's what makes America special. The First Amendment, the freedom of the press, freedom of speech. It sets the US apart from countries with authoritarian regimes. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, where people are jailed or even killed for seeking truth and fact in conflict with those in power. America's democracy is special, and we cannot take it for granted, nor our essential role in it. As one of my guests recently said, we can't have a vibrant democracy if we don't have a vibrant media landscape. And remember, there is also news out there that is not political, and I would caution about telling all of your stories through a political lens, because it does run the risk of eroding trust. We have, of course, once-in-a-century pandemics, and we have mass tragedies. Mother Nature brings blizzards and wildfires, hurricanes and tornadoes, and these stories impact all of us as well. These events impact us all. One of the most memorable stories I covered as a correspondent for CNN was a natural disaster that happened right here in Washington State. Do you remember the Oso mudslide about 10 years ago? Historic rains triggered an avalanche of land, mud, and debris. An entire hillside came crashing down, bulldozing an entire town, plowing over every building, car, and person in its path. It became the state's deadliest natural disaster since the eruption of Mount St. Helens. We had to drive hours from the nearest town just to access that area, to be there and bear witness to that desperation, the hope and the pain of families in search of the missing, while also learning of the heroic act of a local logger who managed to scoop up a young infant and save that life in the rush to escape. These stories matter too. Never underestimate the power of the shared human existence and the human condition, and how the work of journalists can bring us together. But I must also acknowledge it's a time of turmoil and struggle for journalists. Truthfully, our industry seems a little lost in the wilderness sometimes. The path forward is uncertain as people cut cable cords, news corporations cut staff, and audiences seek content that reinforces versus challenges their thinking. Many of you probably noticed and saw the news that CBS Radio is shutting down, CBS News Radio, the very platform that launched Murrow on his journalism career. It's going away. It's going to be shut down next month. It's the end of an era. Companies are trying to find out a sustainable model for connecting to audiences in new spaces. TVs, radios, newspapers are past and present, but shrinking. Streaming seems to have momentum, but what's the future of news consumption and distribution? I don't think that's clear just yet. The age of artificial intelligence is upon us, creating a whole new set of X factors and unknowns and temptations. By the way, this speech is not AI assisted, I swear. Wrote it from the heart, the old-fashioned way. I will say we are seeing some benefits of AI for logging interviews, for organizing information, to do tasks that make the work more efficient, to free us up, to spend more of our energy actually doing the reporting, making phone calls, gathering facts, conducting in-person interviews, and using our brain power in creative ways. Technology is a tool, but it won't replace intuition and novel storytelling, empathy, and our human experience that's crucial to the work and to a good work culture. As we invest in these technologies, we must continue to invest in people. I remind myself that change is inevitable. You may have heard I myself am making a change soon. Change is hard, even good change. We must adapt and plow forward with courage and perseverance, just like Murrow. So here's my advice. Be true to yourself. Authenticity connects. Tell stories your way. Take risks. How you grow and can have a greater impact. Be curious. There's always more to learn and more to understand. Show empathy and treat every person you interview with respect. It's how you build trust and credibility. Your credibility is crucial. It's not about always being first. It's more important to be right. And you have to double check. You have to have the full story to be able to tell it the responsible way. Seek trusted sources of information. Find the experts. Vet and verify, especially with AI these days. Don't rush to highlight or share a viral video. Make sure it's authentic. Don't retweet or repost a story unless you know it's true. Deliver the news. Don't be the news. Understand the motivations of people who are pitching you. What's their goal? What value does their story have for the audience? Have command of the facts, the data, the law, the historical context. Let the facts always lead your reporting. This work requires dedication and steadfast commitment. It requires sacrifice and grit. And at times, it's a grind. In journalism, I have learned that sometimes the deepest impact comes not from some extraordinary moment, but from the consistent work as we work to build a relationship with the people who are part of our stories and the audience. One interview, one live shot, one story, one day at a time. We can still look to the Murrow mission as our guiding light. My hope is, in doing so, a trusted path will be revealed and the communities we serve will find their way back to truth and fact. Thank you, Washington State University. Thank you, Edward R. Murrow. Thank you, Dean Pinkleton, the entire Murrow College staff. You gave me both roots and wings to do what I love. Thank you to my dear colleagues and friends and this beautiful journalism community. You inspire me with your passion and your commitment. Thank you to the great leaders and mentors who have lifted me up and provided opportunities for growth. And thank you to my loving and supportive family for always encouraging me to follow my heart, which has led me to this most meaningful career. And in the words of Edward R. Murrow, good night and good luck. just add go Cougs. Thank you. No, thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you. Okay. Okay.
Blue mic on. There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much. Ana, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to come back. And we are honored by your presence and just incredibly proud of you as a human being and as a journalist. So just grateful for you to be here.
Thank you.
I took some time to write some of my own questions. We also asked Murrow College students to come up with some of their questions. We have about 15, 20 minutes. I promise I'll respect your time and your backsides. I know those chairs can be tough, so I'll do my best here. I just want to have a little bit of a conversation for a few minutes, and we should make sure Ana's lapel mic is on, please, as well. So, gosh, there's so many questions I have. You referenced something about journalism today, and I'm curious, in your mind, are journalists upholding the Murrow legacy today? I know that's a big question. There's a lot of different kind of journalists out there, but as you look across the field, are journalists upholding the Murrow legacy today?
I think the answer is yes. To me, it's absolutely, without a doubt. I think when you look to the people who are truly journalists, they are dogged in the work that they're doing in a time where I think journalism matters more, or as much at least as ever, right, in terms of holding people in power accountable. But I think not everybody who you may think is a journalist is, and that's the part, right?
Okay,
defining
right.
like who is a journalist, because anybody has a cell phone and can do, be capturing video and put that out on the internet, and that's like a step of journalism when it comes to, bearing witness and shining light. But true journalists that, come up through the Murrow College or other schools, frankly, that have really at their heart the foundation that is established here about how to get to the truth and how to seek the facts and how to hold people in power accountable. That takes another level of courage, and it's a different type of responsibility.
Okay, all right, good. Actually, so are you concerned about the ability of nearly anyone to self-publish, to call themselves a journalist? Nearly any podcaster can call themselves a journalist. In your mind, does it debase our role? And I guess the other question with that would be, what should the public expect of journalists? I mean, is there really a difference between a podcaster who uses a cell phone or something else and creates a sort of sensationalist information? When I look to Ana Cabrera, what should I expect from you, from a journalist? What is that essential ingredient that you're giving me, the credibility you're giving me, that I'm not getting from someone else?
Well, I studied 4 years. I got a college degree just to be a journalist. It's not, and then I've had, decades of experience doing the actual work to really develop the craft, to get better at it. And so you can't get that just from any person online. I think it's easy for people to call themselves a journalist, and I do find the current times that we're in to be confusing and challenging, because not all audiences are doing their own homework when they see information online to know, what is true and what's not. Maybe it's sensational, maybe it's a message put out there and a headline that supports somebody's own personal perspective. And I think that's the piece that we're still trying to navigate. How do we break through with all of that noise out there where people have access to all kinds of different information? How do we let the audience know that this is the information they should be looking at if they want truth and fact and a broader understanding to be informed, versus something that's commentary, right? Okay. Versus reporting.
Okay, good. Are you concerned when you do a news show? I know a lot of reporters end up doing commentary at a certain point or hosting critiques. Are you concerned about your personal political perspective seeping into those conversations? How do you guard against those kinds of things in the conversations you're having live on camera when when things are happening? You have guests, those kinds of things.
I always just come armed with the facts, and people talked about all the preparation I do for interviews, all the preparation I do for each segment in my show. I want to understand and be as much of an expert about the subject matter that I'm helping to present as anybody. And we bring on experts to help take us deeper into a topic and bring more understanding to that issue. But that's how I approach, is just have as much of the fact to underpin, that segment, to have command of those facts, to be able to, if I have somebody who's speaking mistruths or alternative facts, I can hold them accountable. I can say, well, what about this data? Or what about what you said a couple weeks ago? Did you change your opinion? And I allow those facts to lead the segment. I also think it helps me to ask the next question, right? To figure out, to seek more of the truth, to hold them accountable. I always say, questions are so powerful because you might start with one question. When they answer it, you ask them another question to dig deeper, to try to hold them accountable.
Very good, very good. Okay. I'm curious about your perspective on bias and fairness in media. Are journalists obligated to tell all sides of the story, even if there's no factual basis for one side of the story? Do we validate specious arguments by discussing them? What do you think?
You have to know the full story to tell it the responsible way. So I think it's important to seek out different perspectives.
Okay.
But it's not all about perspective, right? Again, there's objective truth and objective fact, and that still has to shine through. So you don't want to cloud the story by, interviewing people who may have a particular agenda that is counter to that truth and fact. But I do think it's really important to establish ourselves as people who are seeking that truth and who aren't trying to fit a story into one particular narrative. And so I think, finding those different voices that can help illuminate the story is incredibly important in order to build that trust with the public.
Okay, very good. We're seeing a tremendous mergers taking place in our field today, as you know. So I just did a little bit of my own research. This Skydance Paramount deal is worth $8 billion. Nexstar just purchased Tegna. That merger is $6.2 billion. It will create a broadcast giant with 259 stations, reaching roughly 80% of America's households. Clear violation of FCC policies. It's been passed through the FCC essentially as a waiver of policy. We'll see what happens in the courts. You noted that CBS Radio News is just concluding its service after such a long and prestigious run. It will affect about 700 stations nationwide, and all of their journalists will lose their jobs. It's really kind of remarkable. And I'm wondering, does this kind of consolidation hurt journalism in your mind, and how does it hurt journalism, if it does?
Well,
I'm asking some tough questions.
These are tough questions, and I don't have all those answers.
Sure. Okay.
I think in some ways that question's above me. It's for the business experts in my field. I'm focused. I think the work of journalists is still the same, which is, the facts are the facts. The mission's still the same, and we cannot control some of those financial dynamics that are impacting the way the business is shifting. But I think that right now, we have to do our best to navigate all of that and to continue to bring good, strong, powerful stories that are going to make the difference in people's lives wherever we're reaching them. And I'm of the belief and have confidence that eventually the dust is going to settle. We just have to get through this turbulent time, and I don't know where we're going to land exactly at the end of that, but I stay focused on doing my job to the best of my ability and let the things that are out of my control be handled by those who control them.
Yep, that's fair. Have you ever felt corporate pressure in one way or another way? I mean, even Ed Murrow, after he challenged the abuses of Joe McCarthy, Bill Paisley reduced his TV show, put it on Sunday afternoons. I think it went to maybe 6 times a year at that point. And so there was clearly they were clearly navigating sort of entertainment, the need for viewers, those kinds of things, and the financial support with also the importance, the benefits of news. Have you personally ever felt pressure to do a story one way or another story, or had any kind of experience like that?
I've been really fortunate to work at places that have not provided that pressure. And I've always made sure to stay true to myself and my brand. And so the places that I've sought to work have allowed me to do that. And I feel fortunate because I do see those pressures impacting the industry right now. I mean, we all have seen the lawsuits brought by the Trump administration against individual journalists. We've seen those mergers appear to, happen, be supported if you kind of curry favor with people in political power, and you wonder what that's going to mean for the influence. But I have been very lucky to work in places that seek truth, that encourage us to do the work that we've been trained to do, the work that is the goal of Murrow and the legacy that he's left behind and that we continue to live. Right.
Yeah, your reputation, your credibility is really on the line when you're doing those stories, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, good. I appreciate. I've just it's such a tumultuous time in journalism right now. There's so much to be thinking about. You're experiencing some of that yourself, and there's just so much happening right now. I had a lot of good questions. I haven't figured out the answers yet, so I appreciate you taking a stab at answering.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have all the answers either, and I'm used to asking the questions to get the answers, not being the one to provide all the answers.
I have to tell you, I had lunchathon in New York last year, and she started asking me some darn good questions, and it kind of made me sweat a little bit. It was just like, so I'm glad to be on this side of the microphone and not on your side. So let's get to some of our students' questions. There's a lot of good questions here. So one of them wanted to know what made you want to be a journalist? Was there an aha moment for you? What was that process like for you?
Well, it wasn't a situation where I, at a young age, always knew I wanted to do this work. I think for me, it started in high school. I had the opportunity to be a student reporter in the Vancouver School District, and that experience kind of opened my eyes and piqued my curiosity about the work even more. I got to interview George W. Bush as he came through Vancouver campaigning to be president before he was elected. And I had a chance to interview Tom Brokaw when he came through on his Greatest Generation book tour, and that was very inspirational for me. And I got to ask them questions, and it was that piece, the asking questions, that gave me this sense of power and thrill, and it was like that was fun. I want to do more of that. And truly, it was just those little stepping stones that led to the next. And with every step and every experience, so came here, started learning more about journalism and the work itself, and what it could do, right? What impact we can have in our communities, how we can make a difference in the work that we do. And each of those experiences just led me more and more into falling in love with the work. And just the chance to interview, to meet so many different people, the creative aspect of storytelling, the performance piece I mentioned, that was something I had always kind of gravitated toward when I was younger, doing those things. And so the stars aligned, and each experience and the people that I met along the way, through school, through the professors here, through internships that I did, the mentors that I was able to learn from in those situations, they compelled me to keep going at it, right? To try to take that next step. And so for me, it just happened organically.
Okay, very good, very good. What piece of advice did nobody give you back in the early days that you could have really used? Another student question.
A piece of advice. I think just the piece about how hard the work is.
Ah, okay.
I don't know. You see people on TV and you think they make it look effortless, right? And so you don't realize the amount of work that goes into each of those stories that you watch on a newscast or online. Just really understanding the hard work that it requires in order to accomplish that story at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, depending on your shift. I think that was just something that I naively assumed would be more fun and games, right? And not as challenging as the work itself is. And so I think just having the expectation that as you pursue this career, it's a lot of work, but it is so rewarding, in part because it is such hard work. When you are able to make a difference through a story, it feels so good to be able to do that for someone or for your community, to really feel like you're having that impact in the world. You can change the world in this work.
Right, right, absolutely. Can change the world and do change the world. That's exactly right. You have a family here. I got a chance to meet your parents and your in-laws and your children as well. I'm just curious, how did your upbringing influence your work, your career choices, and also your work as a journalist? How has that influenced you?
Well, I'll start with my parents. My dad would always say when we walk out the door for school, ask good questions.
And so make good choices?
It was ask good questions, and now I ask questions for a living. So I think that's a big piece of it. I also think that I, really was empowered to just be curious, and I found they provided, those high expectations to seek excellence, and to believe in myself because of those expectations to seek excellence. But I think it also developed like a love of learning. Sure. My dad's an educator, and both my parents just encouraged us to work hard, to follow our passions, and that learning was really kind of at the root of all of that, right? Sure. And so I keep learning in the work that I do. That's one thing I love about the work of journalism. Like, you can never know enough. There's always something new to discover. There's topics, to continue to understand. I feel like sometimes I'm going to law school, sometimes I'm taking civics courses, sometimes I'm, becoming a doctor. It's just that you get to learn about all these different career paths too through the work of journalism, and I think that they push me to be curious.
Outstanding, good. If you know Ana, you know that she's exceptionally bright and an exceptionally hard worker as well. And those two characteristics, I think, have served you exceptionally well in your career. So that's great. A lot of our students, they wonder about their career choices. We all did. You leave college, you've been here for 4 years, or in some cases 7 years or 8 years, who knows? And you're just never quite sure, right? And you talked about some of your struggles at KHQ. When you left WSU, how are you feeling about your career at that time? And the students want to know about your struggles a little bit. I know you talked about it, so I don't. Just wondering if you could share a little bit of your perspective, the kinds of things that kind of helped you through a little bit.
I think I left WSU really excited about, I had done cable aid, I, made contacts at the Murrow Symposium, and now I was going to put it all that good practice into, real life. And it was, but I think just the pace of it all was so much faster than I anticipated, and trying to be able to do the work, just that was one of the biggest adjustments that was was difficult. There have been times too throughout the career where you do a story that you might make a mistake, and in the age of social media, that mistake gets amplified, and that has been something that I've had to struggle through at times along the journey. And I'll just say, when you have those moments, you got to own those mistakes, and it does. Time helps heal in many ways. You learn from those moments, and you keep plowing forward. There are challenges too, and you're trying to get a story and you can't get the interview. Right. And I've struggled in those moments where it's like really frustrating. You need that interview in order to make the story really work, to have the complete story. Or you get beat by a competitor who gets the interview or the story, and you weren't able to get it, and those moments are challenging in this career. But the nice thing about the work that we do is there's always another story. There's always a new day to try again, to do better, to get them next time. And there's so much work that reveals itself as you go. And so sometimes you can't plan for that story that's going to be the one that is like hitting the home run. It happens to you, and you are just in a position to grab it and run with it. And it's those moments where you kind of get into the flow and you realize, like, this is making up for those moments of struggle.
Right. Very good. Very good. All right. We are just about at the end. So the last question has to be advice you have for our current students.
I listed a bunch of things because there's so many. There's so much that I want to share with you in that regard. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is to be yourself, to be in this business for the right reasons. If you want to be a journalist, remember, it's not about you, it's about the people that you're serving. And if you do that, you can connect in a deep way, and you're ultimately going to be rewarded. You're going to feel really, really good. But don't try to make it about you. And I think that this work can be inspiring, it can be deflating at times. You get the highs, you get the lows, but the lower the lows, the higher the highs. And so, soak it in, experience all of that, and accept that that's part of the journey. Like, you're gonna feel all of that. And be brave. Be brave through those moments.
Outstanding advice. I have to say, it sounds like you've been Dean of the Murrow College of Communication, so high five. All right.
And I'll just add, I mean, I'm not used to being on this side of the equation. I'm so much more comfortable asking the questions. It's
kind of hard, isn't it?
It is. And one of the things that I talk about, like being true to yourself and just being your authentic self, is I look to my colleagues sometimes and I think, gosh, I wish I could be as articulate as that person, or as strong of a writer as that person, or as great of a storyteller as that person. And we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, but at the end of the day, you can only be who you are. And so thanks for bearing with me too through my stumbles and bumbles at times, and it's just truly wonderful to be in such great company with all of you.
Awesome. That's wonderful, Ana. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us this afternoon. This has been a truly meaningful and inspiring event. I think, I've been looking forward to this for the last, 6 months or something like that. Ana, in honoring you, we honor the enduring standards Edward R. Murrow set for our profession. Courage in the face of pressure, fidelity to truth, and an unwavering respect for the public's right to know. So thank you so very much. Your work reminds me that journalism at its best strengthens democracy, enlarges our shared understanding, and brings us together as informed citizens of our country. May the Murrow legacy continue to inspire us to ask the hard questions and tell the difficult truths, and to conduct ourselves with integrity. For those in the audience, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Tomorrow is the final day of our symposium. We have a sports-themed keynote tomorrow morning here in the Cub at 9, featuring Seahawks Mike Flood as a WSU graduate, and also Mark Dice Ryan, who's a Murrow graduate. We'll follow this with more panels throughout tomorrow morning and conclude with our final keynote featuring Murrow graduate and Fox 13 Seattle's Bill Wixie at noon, also here in the Cub. As Ana stated in the words of Edward R. Murrow, good night and good luck.